I don't believe what I just saw.
This is one of the great moments in the history of baseball.
I believe in miracles. Yes.
Is this the dagger?
It's cold on January 17th, but it was a hot day in sports history. Just a taste. The worm gets in trouble for using his legs. Look out, that Russian rocket is headed for the beach. A good walk spoiled all day, every day. Abby Wambach shatters another glass ceiling. A serious contender for the worst Super Bowl game in history. The King squashes the Mamba. And the Browns blow their best chance ever. Plus, lots of great, hard-to-say names like Gerolitis, Jovanovski, Neuendijk, and Zvronareva. You can question our pronunciation, but don't you dare question our production values. From the lavish studios here at Cabin in Mississauga, it's another episode of This Day in Sports.
Yes, outstanding. And that just says, hey, listen, we might say a few names wrong.
Yeah.
But we're going to have a great time.
And our heart's in the right place.
Our heart is in the right place.
We will say a few names wrong.
We will say a few things wrong.
I've already done it once, yeah.
Does it seem brighter in this room
It does.
today?
It's very bright.
Cabin's usually pretty sexy, but this feels
That's
like...
my light.
Yeah.
This feels like get out.
Frank brought the light back.
Oh, you brought the right? Okay,
I
that's...
brought the intensity up by 20%.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Thank you, Frank.
Hey, no problem.
Frank, always the highest production values from Frank Russo. And always the best haircuts and beards here at the Cabin, which is a great place to go for your gentleman's supply. And it says on the door something to the effect of for the crafty gentlemen and the people who love them, something like that. So it's for everybody to come here, check it out. Always smells great. Always get a good haircut, a good trim on your old beard. Always get a great look, fresh look, if you would like to put it that way. Because you walk out of a barber all the time feeling fresh.
Sure.
No matter what happens to you, you feel fresh.
Yeah.
Even a bad haircut, we might say fresh, but here, never a bad haircut.
You won't get a bad haircut.
It doesn't happen here.
No, it doesn't.
Doesn't bad happen.
It does not.
But there are fedoras.
There are fedoras if something happens.
If you got a bad haircut somewhere else, came in and you're like, you know what? No, let's leave it.
Yeah.
Let's just fit me up with a fedora.
Tons of hats there.
Baseball caps, fedoras, toques. They could cover bad haircuts from somewhere else in any number of ways.
And now we're in January.
Yeah.
So if you made a mistake of the holidays, got the wrong gift for somebody, chance to make it up.
Yeah.
Come in, get some Expo socks. That thing heals everything. Expo socks? Everything about Expo socks, right?
Sure.
Who doesn't want Expo socks? You show up here one night.
Do they sell Expo socks here?
They do.
They do.
Okay.
I did my investigating.
Okay,
good.
Come on down. If you want more, check out cabinforlife.ca. All the details are there, including your chance to get Expo socks. Thank you very much. Yes. Well, listen, here we are. January 17th. What do you think? Matt, anything happened this day?
You know, a lot happened this day, starting with 1987. January 17th, 1987. Oilers winger Yeri Curry scored 2 goals and had 5 assists to factor in all 7 Edmonton goals in their 7-4 win over the Leafs in Toronto. The 7 points also gave him 700 points in his NHL career. So to recap, that's 7 points in a 7-4 win to give him 700 career points on January 17th in 1987.
Whoa, that's a lot of sevens.
Man, that's the end of the podcast right there.
you go.
Man, we're not going to top that.
Yeah, Yari Curry, man. That's it. And his number was?
Oh, what was his number?
17, wasn't it?
I think it was, yeah.
You know,
Am I crazy?
I think it was.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Frank, Yari Curry jersey.
17?
Let's go.
Jersey?
I think, is he number 17?
Uniform number.
Yeah.
And Sandy, are you drinking a 7 and 7 over there?
I've got a CC and Coke right now, Matt. Listen to this, friends.
Enjoy that.
There it is.
Tell
That's
me
right.
that's not going to make you thirsty.
I'm from Flin Flon, Manitoba. I had that before milk.
Number 17.
See,
There we go, buddy.
Number 17, January 17th.
Man.
And
Mike-
retired.
And retired.
The number was retired.
Well, you took us down there. Oh, the number was retired. Okay.
Yeah, it's like, and he's retired. Well, we know.
A lot
Legend
of these
Finland.
people are going to be retired tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Speaking of retired.
Thanks, Mike.
In 1997, Chicago Bulls forward Dennis Rodman was suspended for 11 games without pay by the NBA after he kicked sideline cameraman Eugene Amos in the groin after the two collided during a game. Rodman also settled a lawsuit with Amos out of court for $200,000. The kick, which Amos pretty clearly embellished, shall we say, ended up costing the Worm about $1 million in total with lost salary and the out-court settlement. And we've all seen that clip. That guy, it takes him about 5 seconds to go, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I could make some money here. Oh, and then he starts reeling for like... It's
I feel, there shouldn't be a pot. If someone who's like 6'7" kicks you in the balls, it's immediate.
yeah.
Anyone
6'7",
does, but 6'7" power.
225, like what? Yeah, the guy. Yeah.
Well,
you'd have felt that sooner, sir.
Eugene Amos.
Yeah,
man, that's a tough name.
That's right.
In 1959, January 17th, 1959, due to a rash of injuries on the back end, Red Wings head coach Sid Abel was forced to play star winger Gordie Howe on defense for a game versus Toronto. The Detroit lost the game 2-1. Howe still managed to get on the score sheet, assisting on his team's only goal of the game, and probably punching someone square in the face.
You think Gordie abandoned his position a few times during the game and kind of floated up towards the
definitely.
Maybe.
He's like, the hell with this.
It also didn't go for the puck a few times. It went right to someone's face, I'm sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
The elbow is up.
Oh, always.
Sticking with hockey, in 1999, the Panthers acquired Pavel Bure, Brett Hedican, and Brad Ferentz from Vancouver in exchange for Ed Jovanovski, Dave Gagne, Mike Brown, and Kevin Weeks, and a first-round draft pick. Bure had 251 points over 223 games for Florida over the next 4 seasons.
Yeah.
So not bad.
That's a good trade. That trade is a good trade, in my opinion, for both sides. Jovanovski obviously goes on to play a great career. Kevin Weeks, it's not a. You got a few things.
He's a useful NHL player.
Yeah, but Brad Ferentz. I mean, that's a decent trade. I think the Panthers won that trade, but only by a bit.
I did look up the draft pick. It turned out to be centerman Nathan Smith, who ended up playing 14 games.
So not much there.
So not much there. But 1999, interestingly, that's the year when Vancouver drafted the Sedin twins.
Oh, is it?
The Sedin twins.
Sedins are in there. Okay.
So,
All right. 1999, in a matchup between 14-2 Atlanta and 15-1, the 15-1 Vikings, the Falcons won 30-27 in the NFC Championship game in Minneapolis. With a chance to put Minnesota ahead by 10 and seal the win with just over 2 minutes left, kicker Gary Anderson, who had not missed a field goal attempt that entire season, missed wide left on a 38-yarder, keeping the lead at 7 and allowing Atlanta to tie the game late in regulation. The Falcons drove from their own 9-yard line, and Morton Anderson kicked the game-winning field goal from the 38-yard line, I might add, after the high-powered Minnesota offense was forced to punt twice in overtime. And that Minnesota offense was incredible that year. That was Randy Moss, Robert Smith, Chris Carter, Randall Cunningham.
Yeah.
They scored over 500 points. They looked to be pretty unbeatable. Yeah. And that Super Bowl, them against Denver, would have been pretty cool.
Yeah. That was I remember that game very well. And exactly as soon as everyone landed at the Super Bowl, everyone was saying what could have been. They were already saying what could have been. That was remember the Dirty Birds, Falcons.
Oh,
the Dirty Birds.
O.J. Santiago. Yep. Canadian.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Shit.
Oh yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, in 2012, during a 120-98 win over the Spurs in Miami, Heat forward LeBron James, who had just had his 28th birthday a few weeks earlier, became the youngest player in NBA history to reach 20,000 career points, breaking the previous record held by Kobe Bryant. Yes.
I feel like there's a lot of that. He's probably at 30,000, the same, he's just like
ahead.
Yeah. It's because he started so young. And
it's hard to believe 28, 2012. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I mean, it just feels like, I would say that's probably the prime of LeBron.
For sure.
I would say.
Yeah.
But still going.
Yeah.
January 17th, 1971, Baltimore defeated Dallas 16-13 in Super Bowl V at the Orange Bowl. It was the first Super Bowl game ever played on artificial turf. The game is often referred to as the Blunder Bowl, as there were combined 11 turnovers in the game, and Dallas committed 10 penalties, costing them 133 yards. Cowboys safety Chuck Howley had 2 interceptions and was named the game's most valuable player. He's still the only player from a losing team to be named Super Bowl MVP, and one of just 8 defensive players to win it.
Huh.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. I guess everybody was so bad in that game. They were just
Blunder Bowl.
The Blunder Bowl.
11 turnovers.
Hey, the Colts will take it.
Yeah. After because they had just lost that Super Bowl to the Jets just before that. So
that's right.
They'll take whatever they get, right?
Yep.
2011, coming off of home wins versus Providence and number 8 Purdue that week, the West Virginia men's basketball team entered the Associated Press top 25 for the first time that season. That made them the 9th team from the Big East Conference to be ranked in the top 25 in the same week, along with Pittsburgh, Louisville, Notre Dame, Syracuse, St. John's, Cincinnati, Georgetown, and Connecticut. The only other time in history of the rankings had happened was 2 years earlier, and again, it was the Big East who did it at that time too. Now that conference is not the same as it was then.
What conference is?
Yeah, what does a conference even mean
Yeah,
anymore?
really.
But it is pretty, like, that is when those 9 teams, that's pretty seminal college basketball programs, all of those.
Yeah.
Pretty legendary. To imagine what those conferences, you remember those games in the 90s and 80s, like Georgetown and Syracuse and all those, like, they were great games and they meant a lot.
Yeah.
And that's what the sort of dissolution of conference play, regional conference, like, that's what they're losing with college sports a lot.
Yeah, they absolutely are. I totally agree with that. And I think if you're a fan now, it feels different in that regard because you're kind of like, we play everybody. This kind of
doesn't matter. Yeah,
no.
I heard Chip Kelly is the head coach at UCLA football. I heard him say not long ago he thinks football should be independent from the other sport, like Notre Dame is. Like Notre Dame football is not in a conference. Notre Dame is in a conference in all other sports, but their football team,
know that.
Their football team is independent. His theory is we should just have 135 schools.
Yeah.
And just like you have your top 65 teams or whatever, and they just you can keep your rivalries, but then you can also play other games elsewhere, spread it around, and then it's totally independent of conferences elsewhere.
Yeah.
And I think it actually made a lot of sense.
So how does Notre Dame? How do they have that special
They've
ability to be?
Well, because it's such a franchise on its own, it's worth so much. Like NBC Sports has the rights to Notre Dame football. Like Notre Dame football is only on NBC,
only on NBC.
And they broadcast every Notre Dame game every week in the fall.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because they're such a property on their own, they just decided we don't want to be in a Notre Dame football is such a,
Do you think it's
valuable.
It's like all the pops and their Coca-Cola and they're on their own thing kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's like,
Yeah.
I don't want to, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I guess
So is there a push for that? Like,
Well, I don't know if there's a push. It was just Chip Kelly talking at a press conference off the top. I mean, not off the top of his head, but when he was saying it, I was like, yeah, that totally makes sense because football makes so much more money than all the other sports combined.
Right.
So it sort of has all these different rules. They should just make it a completely independent thing, and then all the other sports could go back to conference play, right? Because they're the ones being dragged around.
They are being dragged around by,
by
you're right.
football.
Yeah.
So it kind of made sense to me.
It makes complete sense.
I
You
thought
can,
that's
you
a
can
good idea.
maintain
for all those
rivalries and
people out,
conferences. And
listening in the podcast, start pushing that. Write letters.
this is the time. It's time to
get
make
the
this
writers
happen.
to start writing about
Let's
it.
stir up a movement.
Well, I'll tell you, there was a movement.
boy.
January 17th, 1970. You're laughing, but it's serious.
Okay.
Baseball faced perhaps its most dangerous legal challenge ever when outfielder Curt Flood files a $4.1 million suit in federal court against Commissioner Bowie Kuhn. The ALNL presidents and all 24 team owners charging that the reserve system that the MLB used to control players and where they play is the equivalent of slavery. Flood, who has the support of the Players Association, gave up a $90,000 salary by sitting out the 1970 season in protest of his being traded to the Phillies. Flood's case was eventually struck down 2 years later in the U.S. Supreme Court, but it marked the beginning, this is the movement, of the end of the reserve clause, which was abolished in the mid-'70s, kickstarting the advent of free agency for players after a certain number of years in the big leagues. And it's interesting. We're going to talk a little bit about great stories that don't have maybe this has been talked about obviously a lot, but the right kind of writing about this story and so people know about it. And the reason I think it has to be told the right way is because many people think it was like he said, I'm not doing this. They said, now we have free agents. It was a long process to get to that point.
Yeah.
And he took the hit to do that.
He did. He suffered a lot.
And it
It's a
wasn't
good documentary.
It
Yeah,
wasn't
for sure.
overnight. And it gets it gets good chunks in baseball and stuff like that, but it needs its own focus.
Yeah, he was really villainized too when that happened too, right? There were a lot of people who didn't like a black man taking a stand like that. A lot of people had a lot to say that blamed him for a lot.
Yeah.
But all those every player who makes a lot of money now should be sending 1% of it to Curt Flood, or his family.
Yeah, I mean, and I remember this. One thing I remember was when you first heard about this was a lot of people said like he's making $90,000 a year and he's gonna just he's
play
crying
baseball.
poor to play, and the suit of $4.1 million was like astronomical that he would think that he could launch that. But you're right, he saved a lot of people and helped a lot of people. But that reserve clause was insane.
Yeah.
The whole idea that just
It was kind of
total control.
It was abusive and it did kind of ruin a lot of people's careers because they could never get away from.
No.
They kept being assigned to the AAA team because their major league team had a third baseman, so they just kept him at AAA, and he could never get out and play. And there might be a lot of guys who could have played in the major leagues, but never were allowed to leave and go anywhere else.
They don't want you don't want this guy to play against us, so we'll keep him in the minors.
Yeah,
simple as that.
Yeah.
It's the studio system of essentially in showbiz, which is we're just going to keep him at MGM because we don't want him to go over to Columbia unless they pay for it. Yeah. Wow, that was a big movement there, friends. 1970.
A lot of movement.
Maddie, what do you got?
And in 1970, 4.1 million. That's a lot of money.
That is a lot of money. A lot of money.
I've got 1995. On January 17th, the Golf Channel, a 24-hour channel devoted solely to the sport, began broadcasting from Birmingham, Alabama. The channel's official launch started with a symbolic flick of the switch by legendary golfer Arnold Palmer.
Nice.
In the early days, it was a premium channel full of infomercials for golf products, but it was retooled later to become a basic tier pay TV channel, and the ratings improved enough to keep it rolling. Any of you have the Golf Channel?
Have the Golf Channel.
You do, eh?
Yep.
I nickname it the Nap Channel.
Sure.
Saturday
relaxing,
afternoon.
yeah.
Well, since Rogers killed baseball on the radio, I now watch golf.
There you go.
That's my nap.
But since 1995...
Shout out Rogers, friend of the show.
No, stop it. Not friends.
No.
So, it's been around for a while now.
Oh, yeah.
It's still available, but they're saying in 2020 they're consolidating its television operation with
In 2020?
NBC Sports. Yeah. So all specialty channels are slowly.
You said 2020, though.
You said 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is 2023. Frank,
Are you going back? Are you talking about in the past
But
they
I'm
did this?
just saying, over time, like it was so popular.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the subscribers have diminished over time.
Sure.
Like most specialty channels. So
Yeah.
We're concerned you were
they're
stuck
just
in the
hanging
90s.
on,
Yeah.
baby.
He's hanging on. Just hanging on. Yeah.
Good run.
Yeah.
Very good
indeed.
run. 95.
2013, after leading the U.S. women's team to an appearance in the finals of that year's FIFA World Cup, American forward Abby Wambach was named Associated Press 2012 Female Athlete of the Year. It made her the first soccer player, male or female, ever to win the award.
Hey.
Pretty cool.
Matt, this one probably hurt. 1988, the Broncos squeaked out a 38-33 win over Cleveland in the AFC Championship game at Mile High Stadium when Ernst Biner fumbled just as he's about to cross the goal line to score what would have been the game-winning TD with 1 minute and 5 seconds left in the fourth quarter. Now known to Browns fans simply as the fumble, Biner's miscue spoiled Cleveland's comeback from a 21-3 halftime deficit and ruined the franchise's best chance ever at reaching the Super Bowl, which they still have not.
Gosh.
Let's have a moment of silence there for Matt and my dad.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh, that was a rough one.
I remember watching it with my dad.
Not with your dad, but I remember watching it. Yeah.
It really looked like.
Did you get real quiet?
I mean, yeah. He doesn't really get upset, but it would just got quiet. But like, it really felt like Cleveland was going to come back and win that game. Like, he was crossing the goal line to score the winning touchdown. And he fumbled. It was like, it literally was the hand of God or something coming down. No, you're from Cleveland. You don't get to, have nice things.
You don't get nice things. Yeah.
No.
Tough one.
1953.
Yeah.
Maureen Connolly won the Australian Open. She won the Australian Open women's title by defeating fellow American Julia Sampson 6-3, 6-2. It began her unmatched year where she became the first woman to win all 4 Grand Slam tournaments in the same calendar year. She is also the only woman to ever win all 4 Grand Slams without losing a set in any of them.
Whoa.
This was the only year she won the Aussie. She's an incredible tennis player, nicknamed Little Mo after the Missouri battleship. Oh. And what's really tragic is how about that? How about that fact?
She's from Australia. No.
No.
She won the Australian Open. Okay.
She's American.
I'm pretty deep into this CC and Coke right now.
Okay. Let me tell you this, though. A year later, after this incredible feat, her career ended in a horse riding accident.
Yeah, we've talked about this in a previous episode.
Yeah,
she was on pace to become... Like, she was like 20 when the accident happened.
Yeah.
And she'd already won 7 Grand Slams or something. Like, she was on her way to being an all-time great.
I thought we had talked about her before.
Yeah.
And then her horse spooked or something. She got crushed up against a vehicle and crushed her right leg. And,
God.
I know.
And then she tragically passed away from cancer at 34. So
oh, my God.
I know.
Wow. That's
so,
rough.
but yeah, Maureen Connolly.
Okay.
Hell of a player.
Amazing. More tennis. 1982, Ivan Lendl defeated Vitas Gerulaitis in 5 sets in a match that lasted just under 4 hours, where Lendl was trailing 2-0 and was facing match point in the 3rd set, but somehow rallied to win and come in the greatest comeback in the tournament's history. This was in the Australian Open men's final. The victory extended Lendl's winning streak to 35 consecutive matches, which dated back to the round of 16 at the previous year's U.S. Open, where he had lost to Gerulaitis.
Boom.
Full circle.
Now, is this Sam Snead fact one of the ones you teased, Mike?
No.
Okay, let's move into quick hits then. What do
Okay,
say?
you don't want to do it.
I got to clear up. I would just want to say, with that Bure trade,
Allegedly.
the first round pick they got, they didn't use that one in 1999, the year they drafted the Sedin twins. They had the option of taking that draft pick in 99 or 2000, and they took it in 2000.
Thank God you clarified that.
I know people were yelling.
Letters?
Oh.
Yelling at their radios for some reason.
They're yelling at their radios for sure.
Just because.
All right, quick hits.
All right.
In 1961, after a 153-131 West win over the East in the NBA All-Star Game in Syracuse, New York. Syracuse, New York. What did we say at Bronx before? In Bronx. 22-year-old Cincinnati Royals guard Oscar Robertson became the youngest All-Star Game MVP in history at 23 points and 14 assists in that game. Now, 153-131, people are like, in the modern era, like, these games are so stupid, all the scoring, there's no defense. This was 1961, friends, and this was a 153-131 All-Star game, so I just want to throw that out there.
Quick hit. Yep. 2004. New Jersey's Patrick Eliash tied an NHL record when he scored his 4th overtime goal of the season to win a game versus Washington, 2-1. Quick hit.
Quick hit, 1995. After 5 straight losing seasons and a move to Anaheim failed to improve attendance numbers, Rams owner Georgia Frontiere announced that she was moving the team to St. Louis to begin playing home games at the newly restored Trans World Dome. In nearly 50 seasons in LA, the Rams never won a championship.
Ooh, quick hit. In 1996, Red Wing center Steve Yzerman scored a power play goal for the 500th of his NHL career during a 3-2 win over Colorado at the Joe Louis Arena. The goal made him just the second player after Gordie Howe to reach 500 in a Detroit uniform. Quick hit.
Quick hit 2010 under new head coach Rex Ryan and rookie quarterback Mark Sanchez. The surprising Jets, who finished the regular season with a 9-7 record, won their second consecutive road playoff game when they upset the heavily favored Chargers 17-14 in San Diego. Quick hit
1994. During a 106-94 win over the T-Wolves at Madison Square Garden, New York center Patrick Ewing became the first player ever to reach 15,000 career points scored in a Knicks uniform. That's kind of hard to believe.
Quick hit. 2003, the Canadiens fired head coach Michel Therrien and replaced him with Claude Julien. The same exact scenario had happened in February 2017 when Montreal fired Therrien for the second time and again replaced him with Julien, who had just been fired by the Bruins a week earlier. They went on to win the Stanley Cup. Bullshit. They did not.
No, they did not.
Sandy, light the candles.
Oh, no.
We're going into birthdays.
Oh, it's happy birthdays. I thought you were creating a funeral scenario.
Yeah.
No, there's always that confusion when we light candles here. Happy birthday, 1929. NHL goalie legend Jacques Plante was born in, Notre Dame de Mont Carmel, Quebec.
Pretty good.
Notre Dame de Mont Carmel, Quebec. Did I get that right?
Feels pretty good.
But it's a hard to pronounce episode.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Seven Vezina trophies, 6 cups. We got to get that right.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of got to get him in the birthdays, 1942 boxing great Muhammad Ali, born in Louisville, Kentucky.
Well, if you went Jacques Plante, then you went Muhammad Ali. You know you're going to go in 1931. Former MLB manager and coach Don Zimmer in Cincinnati, Ohio. The Hedgehog.
The twist,
Don
right?
Zimmer.
That was the Pedro, the twist.
That was him getting knocked down and then him coming back with the Army helmet.
Yeah.
But Zimmer was a double play combination with Jackie Robinson at one point. This guy was in baseball. He was like the Forrest Gump of baseball. He was
a lifer,
everywhere.
Yeah. He was everywhere.
Wow.
Yeah.
1970, happy birthday to 9-time NHL All-Star Jeremy Roenick, was born in Boston, Massachusetts.
1960, 3-time MLB All-Star and 3-time World Series winner Chili Davis, born in Kingston, Jamaica. Chili, one of my favorite nicknames of all time. Like, it's just, I have no idea where it's from.
Nope.
But Chili's a great nickname, and I think it leads me. We have to have that as a draft soon coming up. Best nicknames.
Nicknames?
Yeah.
Chili is great.
Do we do nicknames? Baseball
We did.
nicknames.
Paul
Yep.
Lee. Paul Lee was judging that one. That's
Those
right.
baseball nicknames, right?
But there's so many more.
we
of
could do
course.
another sport. Yeah.
I remember when the Twins traded for Chili Davis in 1990, and it was like they're gonna win.
Yeah.
That was like,
and
the
sure
biggest
enough,
thing.
a year later they did.
Well, here we go. In 1982. Okay. 13-time 1982, which is like gonna make you feel old now. 13-time NBA All-Star, 3-time NBA champ Dwayne Wade in Chicago, Illinois, one of the classiest players to ever play in the NBA.
Indeed, and also in our theme for our draft too, also a guy whose life story everybody needs to hear.
Yes.
Because very few people have overcome more to become what they became than Dwayne Wade.
Yep.
And he deserves everything he's got, that guy.
Yes, I totally agree. And in the time when you had LeBron go there and Bosch go into Miami, the only guy you could still like was Dwayne Wade. Oh, Matt, are you ready for this?
Turn the candles down.
Let's just dim the candles a little bit and bring in the casket. 2008 chess champion Bobby Fischer died in Iceland. They searched for him. They found him. He died.
That's it.
Sad.
What a life.
Another life story.
Yeah, which is mysterious, and you probably wouldn't get all the facts, right?
Probably,
Very
yeah. There's a
interesting.
lot of stories about that. Yeah.
So we got all these stories. We started off with Kurt Flood. You mentioned that Dwayne Wade, Bobby Fischer, all these great stories. So what we thought we would do.
We haven't rolled for this either.
I will roll. This is the wait. Everyone tunes in for the rolling of these dice.
I love it when we roll live.
Well, what it is we've talked about stories and what's great stories, and I think we're challenging ourselves in this draft to draft. We're gonna have 3 books total each, and these are books we would like to write, and they can either be biography, not auto because you're not about yourself, I'm assuming, but write and tell us about a biography or an event, a sporting event you like to write more about, find out more about.
Like you'd like to do the reporting on it.
Yes, you would
You'd
do the
like
research.
to do the digging and.
Okay.
And that's because who our judge this week is a writer.
Yes, an author. Yes, right.
So that's going to tie in. We're going to try to pitch him our book ideas that we think are worthy of our our journalism and investigative skills.
Exactly. Matt, you reacted like you didn't know this is what we're doing.
Well, no,
today.
I wanted to read these books, but I think people would like them. But I think the same thing. I'd like to write them too. That all works.
I think it was that was chosen to protect ourselves from shoddy research where we're like, I'd like to see a book about Reggie Jackson. Dude, there's 7 of them.
There are 11 books.
Well, I would like to write a book of Reggie
That's
Jackson.
what I'm
There
saying.
we go. Okay.
The chances are there probably are a book
Yeah.
about this person,
Sure.
but I still would like to do one
Still one
myself.
myself. Get it. So,
or,
Mike.
or as Frank said, make a documentary.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But we have an author as our judge, so we'll make it a book.
Frank, you have a few of these in mind? Do you think about this stuff?
Not necessarily. No,
Okay.
I haven't given it any thought, but I'll come back. And
Yeah, if we miss something
Frank
as we're
wants
talking.
to do Yari Curry.
Yari Curry story. Mike, you're going first. Matt, you're going second. I'm going third.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna put that down.
Okay, then the first thing I would like to write a book about, I wasn't quite ready to go first. Okay. Actually, it's going to sound, but once you said it, I was like, actually, I think the person I'd like to investigate and tell the story of that I don't think people know enough is Dwayne Wade.
There we go.
Like I really, his story is remarkable, and you know, I can't overstate it enough. How much, and people, if you're listening, dig into the Dwayne Wade story. It is pretty singular what that dude overcame to become what he became.
Is that like childhood to early career?
Like all childhood. Like
I'm reading about him right now. It's
upbringing in Chicago and stuff. Like it is unbelievable. And he got it. And his mother has come through it to the other side, and now he got his mom out of drug addiction and stuff. Like it's incredible. He raised his little brother when he was like 10 years old.
Yeah.
In a horrible neighborhood in Chicago, like every tough sort of stereotype you could throw on the guy, he had to overcome and did. So I'm going to pick Dwayne Wade.
All right.
It's a great pick. So for my pick, I'm going to go a different direction. This is a fun book. We're going for sales. I think this is something you're going to pick up at the airport. You know, you're going to want to grab this. It's a recent thing. It's the gritty, all access, no holds barred story of the Fantasy Football League played by the MLB stars that resulted in the on-field altercation where Tommy Pham slapped Jock Peterson.
Yeah, this is the one
Mike
that
Trout is the commissioner of.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think We'd go very in deep. We'd interview them all, find out their strategies, dig up beefs, because maybe people don't like talking, but everybody loves talking about their fantasy football team. So I think we can get
Nobody
these
likes
guys
listening to people talk about it.
Yeah,
Everybody likes to talk about it.
Yeah, if you're in the league, you just barely care.
But if you're not, it is the worst.
Yeah, it is the worst.
I think Alex Bregman won that league, but I think there could be a lot of fun in there. I think people would read this.
People, yeah.
Exactly. And how do they draft? What do they think? As a rookie, do you draft a rookie?
Yeah.
Do you worry about this? But it's more about just their trash talking.
And I think it's a great idea. I think you'd probably have to wait till they retire. Because most people don't tell all the truth until they're finished playing.
And they'll be scared of Tommy.
Just scared of Tommy,
yeah,
for sure.
That's true. So, but I think people are going to pick it up. Stars and slap decisions.
Oh, I see. Oh, slap. Yeah, that's
sort of the way we put a nice title on it, get it out there.
We did, but to Mike's point, you and I were in that Winnipeg pool, and for years you and I would always say you can't talk about other pools. When people were like, in my other pool, I've got this guy. In my other pool, no one cares.
No one wants to hear about your fantasy team. This is the one exception to that.
You want to hear, because like Mike said, it's famous people talking.
Yeah. And there's a famous incident.
And in the famous incident, what are the punishments is great. I think I was telling Matt this the other day. I had a friend tell me that in their league, when you lose, they play in Detroit. If you lose, you have to take an economy Spirit flight from Detroit to LA and back. And you can't do any upgrades. And the guy who did it last year was telling this to us and saying it felt like you were sitting in a lawn chair. And you
Shout
have to
out
go,
Spirit Airlines.
You have to go and come right back too. So
And we'd like to welcome our new sponsor, Spirit Airlines.
that was their punishment for losing.
So we'd flying to Los Angeles.
So when you're baseball stars, what is your
what's the punishment?
What's the punishment? What is your
what's the stakes too?
What is the stakes?
Yes, they probably won't reveal that till they retire either.
No, punishment is you have to play for the Angels.
Wow. Yeah. Ouch.
Oh.
Ouch. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna go for an incident as well. This is one that's going to be very raw for me, and probably not the only one. I would love to know the behind the scenes, what the hell happened, the 1985 ALCS between the Royals and the Jays. Behind the scenes from both those teams, because I think a little bit about books about teams that win, like The Bad Guys Won, in the same sense that they also wrote a book called The Other Side of Glory, which was about the Red Sox losing in '86. So now you got a nice combination in one book of what it was like to be the Royals coming all the way back from down 3-1 in games, and the Jays losing and collapsing and destroying my young heart.
Stepping on.
And if you don't know what happened that night, basically, I'm watching that game with my grandmother, the final game, and they lose, and I'm crying. And they put on a Petro-Canada commercial that they've taped long ago, and it's like Barfield and Mosby, and everyone's just walking off the field going, "Thanks, fans!" Like this whole "Thanks, fans" thing they're going to play, and I couldn't stop crying. And my grandmother just said, "Stop it right now! You stop it!" No, it's like no comfort at all.
Man,
It's because she was hurting too.
She might have been hurting inside
or a
too.
Royals fan.
Yeah. Oh, damn.
You never know.
The first year,
I'd rather she
that
was hurting.
85 series, that's the first year it went to 7 games.
Yeah, that was another interesting story.
The Jays were up 3.
They would have already won.
If it was a 5-game series like it had been every other year before that, they'd have won it.
Brutal.
In the World Series. But because it was 7, the Royals had a chance to come back. And who was it? Was it Jim Lonborg hit that triple off of Steve that like floated over Barfield's head and like
there was I know Dane Orge.
Dane Orge had a big hit too.
Yeah, big hit.
But
was
there was
Daryl Porter?
No, I thought it was anyway. No, it wasn't Lombard. I'm saying the wrong name, but it's somebody. But that triple that floated off of Steve and over Barfield's head.
I know you're thinking it's a catcher, and I'll think of it eventually.
Hey, save it for the book.
That's right.
There it is.
Save it
There's
for
the
research.
cliffhanger. Who was it?
Okay, so my next one is a day. I would like to do a research, a behind the scenes on the 2003 NBA draft, which is also going to feature Dwayne Wade. But it's the draft with LeBron, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, Carmelo Anthony, and Darko Milicic, who my beloved Detroit Pistons selected. Yeah, it is going to hurt. But that's the draft where all those guys weren't in it, and the Pistons, instead of drafting Bosh, Wade, Carmelo, or one of those other guys, took Darko, 2nd overall, which if you watch the footage of the draft, is universally agreed upon as being the pick. Like, no one goes, what are they doing? Like, they're crazy. He was the pick. It really flamed out.
Yeah.
And that 2004-05 team won the championship. So imagine that 04-05 team has Carmelo Anthony as a rookie on it too.
Yeah.
Instead of a guy who sat at the end of the bench and never played.
Yeah.
They
You're definitely imagining it.
I spent a lot of nights. They might have won 3 or 4 championships if they'd have had Carmelo on that team too.
Yeah.
Like, it's unbelievable to think of, and they completely wasted it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'd like to dig into that. It might hurt my feelings. But
Yeah, it'd be much like it's going to hurt me. Jim Sundberg's who you're thinking of.
Jim Sundberg, thank you.
There we
Longhorn.
go. Oh, you did there.
Yeah.
Picking it up.
Did you look that up, or did you just remember it?
I looked it up.
Okay.
I mean,
But I was in the back of my head, too. And I didn't want to let it float too long.
But you were listening.
Oh, I heard exactly what he said.
Okay. So the rule.
Oh, I heard exactly what he said.
The rule of this is stop it.
That's right.
you stop it.
I'm 13.
I'm going to say that to my kid every time.
Oh, it hurts.
So
Stop.
we have to have at least one biography, right?
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
All right. Well, I'm going to surprise no one with my biography.
Yes. Wes Parsons.
It's Newsy Lalonde.
Oh, yes.
Newsy Lalonde. There it
Lalonde,
is.
favorite of the show.
Okay.
Newsy Lalonde, of course, he worked at the Cornwall Freeholders, how he got his nickname.
You don't have to tell us.
He played in the first NHL game. He's an incredible player, and I think that there's a lot to be told. We've told a lot of it on this podcast already, but so I won't go on too long. But Newsy Lalonde, you're all gonna pick it up when it comes up.
Yeah.
Well, we got to make sure it's.
We got to make Newsy shirts. I mean, I couldn't find he's probably in a bunch of books, but I didn't immediately find a Newsy Lalonde book.
No, listen, I have no idea if there is or not. I think you should do it.
All right.
I feel like it's time. I think it's
We'll
time.
get on it.
All right.
Well,
And you know what? The musical
there's
rights
more
will be
Newsy.
snapped up.
well, they'll be gone. Extra, and just that's
For
the
sure.
musical right there.
For sure.
Okay, I'm going with an individual who was a beloved, hated, had an interesting career in a couple sports even, and that's Jerry Krause. You were talking about that's the architect basically of the Bulls.
Yeah.
And all the things going on, and he ended up being in baseball. He wasn't baseball executive; it was basketball, and they went back to baseball. And if you watch any of The Last Dance, you got a bit of what Jerry Krause was all about. I want to see an in-depth book about that guy, because I think there's going to be a lot of stories that people now that he's died are willing to tell that they wouldn't tell when he was alive.
I'm sure you're right.
Yeah, I know it's a little bit of a wild card, but I'm very.
No, I
interested
like
in what
where your head's at. Okay, my last one is I would like to see in along the lines of Matt's idea of like I think this would be a great like airplane read like you buy it. I would like to see a book about the 2001 Miami Hurricanes football team.
Oh,
They were undefeated. They won the Rose Bowl and the national championship, coached by Larry Coker in his first season. But I'm going to list for you the players on this team. It had more pro players than any college football team in history. The 4 running backs alone, Willis McGahee, Najee Davenport, Clinton Portis, and Frank Gore on one college team.
Yeah.
Wow.
Plus, defensive backs, you had Ed Reed, Antrell Roll, and Sean Taylor. Those are 3 really exceptional. The team, Philip Buchanan was a defensive back on that team too.
That's incredible.
They had Jonathan Vilma as a linebacker, Vince Wilfork. It is an incredible collection of future NBA players. Jeremy Shockey and Kellen Winslow Jr. as tight ends. It is an amazing amalgam of players. So, although unfortunately the quarterback is Ken Dorsey, but everybody else is really, has a really amazing. And also, you got to imagine in Miami in 2001, there was a lot of things going on.
Oh, absolutely.
Miami has
Fair
been
enough.
indicted a number of times
Yeah.
for all their players receiving a lot of, shall we say, fringe benefits from various boosters around the greater Miami area.
Yeah.
Including Luther Campbell from the 2 Live crew. So I would like to sort of do a dig into that and see how those guys lived in Miami. I'm sure it'd be salacious, but it'd probably be a lot of fun.
Oh yeah. The glory days.
That's what it would be called.
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you.
I think you're
Thank
right.
you.
So that's a great pick. We only have one more. Do you guys want to
This
do
is it.
4? Do you want to do two more rounds, or I've got to narrow it down to my? Okay.
I think we said we're gonna do 3.
All
so,
right. I
that's
got
as much
to
research
make a
as I've
pick
done.
here.
I mean,
Okay. I'm gonna go with I'm going to go with a book about the 1974-75 Washington Capitals.
Okay.
Their first year where they went 8-76-5. The book's going to be called 8 is Enough. And it's going to focus on the positives.
Forward by Dick Van Patten.
The positives of we covered this on a podcast recently, but the positives of such a losing season,
Yeah.
but what they all gained through it. We try and figure out. Their coach, as we said, Jim Anderson, he had to resign because of stomach ulcers from the stress. Bill Mickelson was a minus 82 after appearing in 59 games. But I think it would be fun to focus on the good that came out of that, the friendships, everything they could. But just what a year! 8 wins, 76 losses.
So you found that when you were researching, and it was like the scariest teams or whatever it was, right?
Yeah.
And you're stuck on that now.
Well, I can't stop thinking about it.
Yeah,
and Newsy.
Yeah.
I was going to do them all from stories that we've already done, but then I did want to. We didn't really talk about the fantasy football one, but I do think that a great book could be, if there isn't one already, about that Washington Capitals.
Wow.
74-75.
I'm pretty sure there isn't, so I think you'd have.
Yeah, there wouldn't be, and you probably have a lot of those guys who would, if you can find them, would talk.
Yeah.
Just go down to the Hall of Fame. Oh no.
Well, friends, I'm going to go, because we talked about our draft. I also have a draft I'd like to dig into. A lot was made of the 1983 NFL draft. That's the Elway to Marino one. But I think the 1987 NFL draft was one I'd like to dig into. And the reason I think it's an interesting draft, first of all, Matt, do you remember who was drafted first in 1987?
1987.
And also ties into what Mike was just saying.
Vinny Testaverde.
That's right. Vinny
Wow.
Testaverde. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the year Vinny was first. Cornelius Bennett was second. You have Rod Woodson in there, and there's a whole list of guys.
A lot of good players,
Jeff Breeze is in there. Jim Harbaugh is in there. Tim McDonald, yep.
Greg Lloyd.
And then they have a supplemental draft, and that's when Bosworth goes and Chris Carter.
And also, late in that 1987 draft, drafted by the Los Angeles Raiders, Bo Jackson.
Oh.
And future Raider quarterback Rich Gannon, who I know remember well because you like to talk about it. He once won my fantasy football league in Winnipeg with Rich the Cannon Gannon, and maybe Steve Berline. Maybe he won somebody a fantasy football once. Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bo Jackson's in there, of course, and this is why I sort of have the extra level of thinking the 87 one's interesting, because that was the year they went on strike. Yeah. So they do this draft, and they're all waiting for Bo to play and all these guys to play, and it's scab players playing instead.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it's all this hype that doesn't pay off until halfway through, and they finally do play. And that's I believe that was when the Redskins beat the Broncos in the World Series, the Super Bowl. But that was a very interesting year because I remember that everyone was just salivating to see Bo Jackson play, and that strike happened. That was a big part of it. And they're as excited as they were to see Vinny Testaverde play. They really want to see Bo and Bosworth.
Yeah,
everyone want to see Bosworth play. There's so much hype coming out of college with Bosworth, and they just didn't get any of that for half the season.
It's not going to tie into your book, but the list here of players who crossed the picket line that year in 1987: Mark Gastineau, Joe Montana, Doug Flutie, and Steve Largent. All played with Scabs.
Did you?
That hurts my feelings.
I don't know if you watched the documentary about the '85 Bears and all the stuff that's going on.
I might have seen, yeah.
And when the Scab players came in, and what's his nuts? The coach. I don't know why it's Ditka says he goes and gets all these Scab guys. He's coaching, and he goes to the press conference, and he says, "These are my kind of guys. These are my kind of players." And all the '85 guys were like, "Oh God!" They said that hurt so bad that Ditka. And Ditka was
a former player
who grew up in a union family.
Yeah.
Said, no, this is wrong. These guys want too much out of this. These Scab guys, they're my kind of guys. And that just pissed off all of those guys. So all the things they loved about him, they hated all of a sudden 2 years later.
Do it.
Yeah.
Can I pitch my backup?
Sure.
This won't be in this. I just want to see if you guys will buy this.
Sure.
As an airport one. So it's not in the competition. We've done our 3, but this is of the moment. Pot boiler social commentary. It's about the 7 hours or so that we thought Shohei Ohtani was a Blue Jay.
Yeah.
It follows. You have interviews with the flight trackers, with restaurant the reservations, all the theories. You just go down the rabbit hole and relive those moments.
Sure. I mean, it could be probably done like a Toronto Life or something like that.
There you go. It's an
maybe
article.
not.
It's
An
more of
article,
a magazine article.
in depth though, like New Yorker size.
The other one I thought about doing a book on, and I think you could do a book on it, is I think you and I were both there, is the Bautista bat flip game.
Yeah.
I honestly think you could do a book on that game.
Yeah, if you broke it down.
You could go inning by inning. That 8th inning or the 7th inning alone, you could write forever about. There was the goings on of it, you could talk to all the guys afterwards about how they felt about what happened, all that stuff. Like, there's so many people involved in that game who were great players on both sides. Yeah. Adrian Beltre is going to go in the Hall of Fame. You had a lot of really good players there. I think that would be a great, sort of verbal history, oral history.
Yeah. And there's a book that was written that was really great. It's about the Game 7 of the Red Sox Reds in '75, and the way they did it was really smart because they would go like, "Here's inning 1. Here's what's happening in the game. Yeah. Here's something that sparks another story about that season." I think they could do that with the bat flip.
Totally.
You could extend that from one game into the back.
Especially because the Jays hadn't been to the playoffs in so long and all that stuff. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And a lot of Rangers players have, like you said, Belcher backstory, Cole Hamels and that, like all those guys.
Yeah, that's right.
Here's the one that I had a bonus book idea. This is kind of outside of our parameters. I didn't pick it. And in talking to my wife, we were talking about this. Strange injuries. Just a book about strange injuries off the field.
Okay.
Only off the field injuries that prevented people from playing. Things like Wade Boggs blowing out his back, putting on cowboy boots, Glenn Allen Hill getting up and stumbling in the middle of the night into a glass table.
Because he was scared of spiders.
And my favorite is that Kylie brought this up. She said, "How about that guy who broke his arm trying to stop the pizza box from falling off the seat in his bed?" That was Nate Burleson in Detroit.
Oh, that's right.
He was driving a pizza home from takeout. The pizza started to slide off the passenger seat, so he reached over to get it. And he broke his arm, and he was out for like a month.
What about the drone? What about fixing the drone?
Oh, that's Bauer. Bauer, yeah.
That's right.
We one of the early podcasts we talked about doing this as a draft. We never did it, but we were talking about it.
Strictly off the field, though. Has to be off
what
the
about
field.
The Larry Robinson story. We heard about him
playing polo.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Matthew Schneider let us know he played polo, and that's how Schneider got his call up.
Okay.
Larry Robinson.
I think
playing polo.
that is a future draft for sure.
I like it.
Stupidest off-field
Or
injuries.
unfortunate events that turned into
fortune for somebody else, though, right?
Schneider becoming a full-time NHLer.
Yeah.
Well, we have to go back now to what we're focusing on. Which is our books, our book pitch. So we're going to go to our judge right now, a published author who's going to judge who has the best book ideas. All right. Our This Day in Sports guest judge today is Andrew Forbes. Andrew is the author of a couple of short story collections outside of the sports realm, but really caught our attention for this episode's purposes. A couple of books, which are a collection of essays, baseball essays, one being The Utility of Boredom. There it is. And The Only Way is the Steady Way, Baseball, Ichiro, and How We Watch the Game, right there. Fantastic collections of essays. His work has appeared in such places as the Toronto Star. Andrew has a novel coming out later this year, a new collection of baseball writing due in 2025. A lot going on, yet somehow he found enough time to hang out with the three of us and judge what we think are fantastic ideas for sports books. Please welcome to the show, Andrew Forbes.
Woo!
Yes.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're excited to have you here. I don't know how you have the time. And I was just thinking, like, you've got the novel coming out, and you already know you've got a collection of essays in 2025. And what shocks me most about that collection of essays, it says you already have a title already.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, those things are always subject to change, but I think this one's pretty firm because it's kind of the hook that the whole thing is hung on. So it's another collection of essays about baseball, but it's all kind of clustered around the theme of baseball and labor, baseball and work. And so it's named after the nickname of the guy who was kind of the original germ of the idea, who was this pitcher for the St. Louis Browns in the 1920s. His name was Hub Pruitt, but his nickname was Shucks because people said that was the worst word he ever said. So he's a pretty interesting character. But the gist of it basically is his story appealed to me because this guy wound up being pitching for the Browns. In a nutshell, he was at University of Missouri. He was playing ball. A scout saw him. Back then, it took was a scout to see you play, or even just to kind of hear that you were a decent player. And they'd say, he was told, look, the next time you're in St. Louis, if you want to play big league ball, come see us. This was a Cardinals scout in 1920, but at the time, the Cardinals and the Browns, who were the American League team, that we know them as the Orioles now. Yeah. They shared a ballpark. They both played at Sportsman's Park in St. Louis. The Cardinals were on the road, the Browns president was there in his office around the corner. So he ran into this guy, Shucks, and he said, "Well, look, if you're good enough for the Cardinals, you're probably good enough for us. Do you want to just sign with us?" And he did. But his whole long game was that he wasn't really interested in being a big league ball player. He was doing this to make money to go to med school. His father had been a doctor, and he died when his carriage overturned on his way home from a house call when Hub was young, and his lifelong dream was to be a doctor. So he bankrolled med school by playing big league ball, and none of this would have lasted if it weren't for the fact that in 22 and for about half of 1923, this guy showed this freaky ability to strike out Babe Ruth. So the Browns, you probably know, they had a legacy of being terrible.
Yes.
They were good for about 2 seasons. They were in the World Series against the Cardinals in 44,
Once,
lost. But in 22, they were in a dogfight for the pennant with the Yankees. And Hub Pruitt kept them in the fight by routinely striking out Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth couldn't get anything off this guy. He had a fadeaway pitch, he called it, which was like a screwball, that Ruth couldn't touch. So anyway, so basically I went to this publisher and said, this is the idea. The book is going to be called Shucks because it's just such a great title.
It is.
And this is what it's about. And they said, yeah, let's do it. So that's what I'm working on.
Nice. Okay. Well, we're looking forward to that, of course. And a couple of things you wanted to ask about. Matt, you wanted to ask a question, I think.
Yeah, Andrew, I have a question for you. So I was looking for a book for Sandy here. I was buying Sandy a book. So I go into the bookstore, hadn't heard of it before, found The Only Way is the Steady Way, your book on Ichiro, and I picked it up right away. I was fascinated by it. But I want to know what began your fascination with Ichiro? Like where did that book start?
Yeah, I mean, that book started, to answer your questions kind of out of order. That book started because I had written in my first book, The Utility of Boredom, I'd written a short piece about Ichiro and figured that was going to be the end of it. But he just kind of kept, like, he was just too interesting to me. There's a writer I've loved named Richard Ford who said that you got to write about the thing that causes a commotion in your heart, the thing that kind of keeps bugging you a little bit. And so Ichiro was that. But he became my favorite player, because I think precisely because he was so against the grain in the early 2000s, right? Like, this was the era of Bonds and of 70 home runs and balls hit a mile, and the game was kind of becoming a little bit too bombastic to be engaging for me. I grew up on 80s baseball. I grew up on, the Cardinals stealing 100 bases. Like, I grew up on stuff where you got a guy on and you got him over, and home runs were great, but they weren't the only way to score. So I still loved baseball, circa 2000, 2001. But it didn't, the calories started to feel a little empty.
Mm-hmm.
But Ichiro was a completely different kind of game, right? He was enigmatic. He was worldly. He was just kind of a freak. Like, he just didn't fit in, and I really appreciated that. And then he continued to be my favorite player because he just proved, like, his longevity was just so interesting to me. He was just so metronomically dependable. Like, he was just good year in, year out. So he became kind of emblematic of the game for me over a couple of decades, and so as I say, I knew that I'd put a piece in that first book, but I couldn't put him down. There was more to say. So the second book came about like that.
Nice.
And in that book, there's also a story about this game in Peterborough. You call it Spoke Peck and the greatest baseball game ever played in Peterborough. Can you briefly describe that happening?
So in October of 1923, Tris Speaker, who was he really is one of the greatest ball players in history. We don't hear about him as much anymore. It was very common for players, when the regular season was finished, to put together a team and go barnstorming to make some more money. And the only rule against it at that point was that if you were one of the 2 pennant winners, you weren't allowed to do it. This is how Ruth got in trouble a few years later. He and a couple other guys from the Yankees got slapped and suspended, actually. But it was what you did to make some extra money, right? To make a year-round income. So Tris Speaker and a bunch of other guys from the American League, including Ty Cobb, got together, called themselves Tris Speaker's All-Stars, and came up to Canada. And it turns out what they wanted to do was just kind of play a few games, make a few bucks, and then go fishing or hunting.
Mm-hmm.
So Cobb plays the first game. They play in East End, Toronto, Scarborough Grounds, I think it was called. And then Cobb skips out. He goes. I think they spend it like a layover date in Rice Lake, which is not too far south of Peterborough. And then Cobb hops on a train, goes up to Temagami to go hunting. But Speaker and a couple other guys who were actual names in the American League come to Peterborough. And it turns out the connection was that there was a guy named Roger Peckinpah, who was a shortstop for the Senators at the time, for Washington. He had a cabin not too far east of Peterborough. And he seems to have had some buddies who were involved in the Great War Veterans Association, which is like a precursor to the Legion, who needed help raising money to build a new lodge, essentially. So he somehow convinced the Speaker and the other guys that they're going to play a game in Peterborough. And some of the proceeds go to that, and some of them go to line these guys' pockets. And what's fascinating to me is that field is. I was right over there this afternoon. That field is still there.
Oh wow!
So for a baseball geek like me, it's like I just kind of want to touch the dirt because it's fascinating to me.
It's so crazy, to hear those names and to be in that area, Peterborough, Ontario, for a lot of people that are outside of the
all places, yeah. And it came about because I saw a picture on Facebook years ago that they had posted. The archives here had posted a picture of Speaker like with his foot up on the running board of a car down on George Street downtown, and I recognized it right away. And I was like, "What the hell was Tris Speaker doing in Peterborough?" So then I got into the archives and dug all this up. It's a great story.
That is a great story. And there's no plaque or anything there, is there?
There's a plaque about like local hockey players who played softball.
Yeah.
Nothing mentioning a Hall of Famer who still holds the record for career doubles in baseball and stuff like that. So, lifetime average, I don't know, 340 or something.
It's sadly a Canadian thing where we don't put plaques up. We don't celebrate any of these things. I think it was an American thing that would definitely probably be called Speaker Field right now or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, although it's worth noting that like Peterborough and a lot of these towns in southern Ontario were baseball towns. Really, they really did have two sports, right? Hockey was the winter sport, and baseball was the summer sport.
Yeah.
It's not quite that way anymore, as you say, but yeah, it really was popular.
I mean, I got Nova Scotia at a lodge that Babe Ruth had stayed at, and they still have the Pictou.
Is that Pictou Lodge? My mom's from Pictou.
Amazing, yeah.
And I remember the photo they always had on the wall there. Yeah,
they have a telegram sent because he left his watch there by accident. So it's like Babe Ruth. I had a watch, did you?
Yeah, and apparently he ate his weight in lobster too. So.
Well, this is fantastic. You are obviously qualified as an author of sports books to judge this fantastic. Well, basically what we do is we pitch these ideas. Basically, like, these would be great ideas for books that we would like to write, not even just a book someone else should write or a subject out there we actually thought we would write. And I think the main reason we said that is because our research is often shoddy. So if we suggested a book we would like to write, that protects us from you going, there is a book like that already, So to be honest. So if we can jump, I'll actually just do a quick review. Team one is the 1985 ALCS Blue Jays Royals. They have 1987 NFL draft and then the Jerry Krause biography. Team two is the Dwayne Wade biography, the 2003 NBA draft, possibly from the Pistons perspective, the 2001 Miami Hurricanes football team. Team three is the fantasy football league that Tommy Pham slapped Jock Peterson in, the New Zealand Lawn biography, fans of the show. And for the 74-75 Washington Capitals. Those were the three different teams, quite different teams, actually.
Yeah, very different.
So when you first look at those teams, Andrew, which ones jump out at you as something you'd be interested in right away?
Okay, so first of all, the first one I read, the first one on the list, the 85 ALCS, that's a strong entry. That's a great start because that, as a lifelong Blue Jays fan, that, that haunts us as kind of the original pain, right? This is the first time the team actually has a shot at anything. But what's interesting when you go back into it is how good a story that is from the perspective of Royals fans too, right? Because they what do they lose in the 70s? They lose like 3 ALCSs in a row to the Yankees.
Yeah.
They
They
lost.
win in 80, but then lose the World Series.
Yeah.
Right. What are they? They lose to the Tigers in 84. Everybody loses to the Tigers in 84.
Yeah.
And then 85, this is their shot, right? And they're on the brink of elimination and they come back. So if you look at it from a perspective of not being a Blue Jays fan, it's a much more stirring tale. But anyway, all to say that whatever angle you took, that is a book I would snap up. I'd buy it the day it was released. So that's a good start. What do we got? The 87 NFL draft, right? That's whose year is that? That Testaverde's number one?
Number one.
Yeah.
Testaverde, Bo Jackson's in that draft. Chris Carter.
Bo Jackson's in that draft, but he's like way down, isn't he? He's like, and
yes.
Don't tell me whose it is, but was part of the reason for that because they weren't sure he was going to commit to football? Is that why he dropped so low?
It was Al Davis basically took a chance on it on the off chance that he would come back and play football. Nobody else thought he would. Because I think he'd become an all-star even in baseball by then, or he was certainly very good.
Yeah. And who else is in that draft though? So
Rod Woodson's in that draft.
Rod Woodson.
The thing about that draft that was interesting too, though, was that was the year of the strike. So they have this draft and
right. The replacements. Yeah.
That's the story. And then that weird supplemental draft. There's 3 guys drafted, and one of them is Bosworth, and another is Chris Carter.
Yeah.
Other story.
That is funny. So that's strong too. And the Jerry Krause is topical, of course, because he was booed and his wife was in tears, and I mean that's brutal.
That's one of the worst things I've seen in a long time. That was really, really bad.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a fascinating guy, right? Because he was also a Major League Baseball scout, right? He scouted I know he scouted for the White Sox, Mariners.
That's how Jerry Reinsdorf knew him, I think, right? Was he knew him as a scout for the White Sox?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's those are strong choices.
So that's your
3 books I would read.
Yeah, that's your team 1. Team 2. What do you think there, Andrew?
Team 2 is the first one is the Dwayne Wade, right?
That's right.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. I think I would read that. Like Chicago guy, right? And he goes to Marquette, so he's stays local, and then he's picked by the Heat, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the reason I think he deserves a book, well, I'm giving it away now, as we knew we would. His story, if you don't know it, his story of what he pulled himself through is what made me want to. Yeah. He basically, from the age of like 8, raised his younger brother. His mother was a drug addict. His father was in prison. It's a terrible story, and yet he almost superhumanly pulled himself through it, which is why I sort of thought that deserved a book, kind of thing.
It's also
and a pretty interesting guy in retirement too, right?
Yeah,
like his marriage with Gabrielle Union, and then his daughter, his transgender daughter, and so they leave Florida.
Advocate for that, and he seems like a great guy. I'm not particularly a Heat fan at all, but so they'd give away that this is my team.
It's also his birthday. It is also his birthday today. A reminder.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to let that affect my decision.
It all ties in.
Yeah. And then, the 2003. This is the Darko draft, right? This is what are the Pistons thinking?
Oh, yes. As a Pistons fan, yes. Let me assure you, that's the angle.
Ouch! A Pistons fan. Ouch.
And it's also the year Dwayne Wade was drafted too.
Yeah. He's in the top 5, right? He's like number 5 or something.
Yeah, it's LeBron, Darko, Wade, or Carmelo, Bosch, and
Carmelo's in there. Yeah, I was a Syracuse guy. I didn't go there, but I was a Syracuse fan from the 90s. Yeah. So I remember I was, Melo. I remember that.
Yeah. Anyway, I just thought it'd be interesting because so many star players and stuff. Yeah.
Like in the war room with the Pistons. Who was the GM in Detroit then?
I think it was Dumars.
Okay.
Yeah,
that would be a good book. That would be interesting.
I'd have to cry every 2 pages, but I'd keep reading.
Yeah, tear stained manuscript always attracts interest. I can tell you that.
Perfect, by the way. So Andrew, you read the 85 J's book at the same time as Mike reads that book, and you both just call it crying constantly.
Yeah, we'll both be very dehydrated. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And then the 2001 Hurricanes, national champions. Who's on that team?
It's an extraordinary team. It's like, I think they have the record for the most players who played in the NFL. Like, they had the most future NFL players on their roster at one time. They had Andre Johnson, Willis McGahee, Clinton Portis, Frank Gore, Philip Buchanan, Ed Reed, Mike Rumpf, Antrell Roll, Jonathan Vilma. It's an extraordinary, and basically, as you know, the culture down in Miami with misbehavior and stuff, and the famous boosters of the University of Miami too. I'm sure there's lots of seedy stuff to go with that story.
I'm sure. Yeah. Okay. Strong. Team 3, I have a question about the fantasy league. Do we know who else was in that league?
I think it was won by Alex Bregman. Not totally sure of all the people, and I don't even know if that's correct that he won, but it was Sandy, you know something?
Trout was commissioner.
Yeah, I was gonna say Trout was commissioner, yeah.
So yeah, we got Pham, we got Peterson, we got Trout. I believe Bregman was in it. I don't.
Okay.
But
that's interesting. Yeah, that is interesting. My concern is that it's not going to end up being as entertaining as the TV series, The League.
Possibly.
but pretty strong anyway.
Wouldn't people love to hear about like star players in a fantasy? Like, everyone talks about their own fantasy team and it's boring and nobody wants to hear about it. What if it was players talking about their fantasy league? I think it would have to be.
I don't think so, Matt. No.
It would probably still be boring.
It would humanize these guys. And you know what? Hearing that Trout is commissioner, baseball has for years been rightfully accused of failing to understand how to sell their superstars, right? And failing to kind of provide a human dimension to these guys who are fantastic athletes, but fairly boring in the public eye. And that's true of a lot of them, but especially of Mike Trout, who, he's been hurt a lot in the last couple of years, but he's basically Mickey Mantle, right? Like he's unbelievable. If he could switch hit, he would be Mickey Mantle. But he seems like, I know that he enjoys weather reports.
Yeah.
Okay. And he's apparently content to stay with the Angels for the rest of his life. That's really all I know about him. And that's not a lot to endear a person. So I would actually like to hear about the fantasy league that Mike Trout is the commissioner of. Yeah,
and I think they had like text threads where they would trash talk and stuff like that. And I think
I think that's basically the point of fantasy sports, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, this one, you're picking it up at the airport. It's a short read, and I think that people are like, "Oh, I'm gonna grab that for the flight."
Can I tell you quickly about the last fantasy league I was in?
Sure.
I worked in an office. It was a tech office. And I already was leaning away from fantasy sports based on the idea that it demands you to cheer for things that you expect as opposed to waiting for the unexpected, which is the reason that I enjoy baseball, right? Like, I want to not know what's going to happen. I want to be shocked. But anyway, the lead developer at this company I worked in was Cuban. So, and a huge baseball guy, loved the Yankees. And invited me into this league, and I think I spent 2 seasons in it. By the second season, it was basically me and a bunch of Cuban guys, and all the trash talk was in Spanish, and I think it was all about me. So I bowed out. I finished like 7th, and I was like, "That's it. Thanks." Anyway, all to say, that could be a pretty interesting book.
Yeah.
So, okay, Newsy Lalonde. I know very little.
Oh, well, first of all,
Habs, right? I know he played for the Habs.
Yeah.
And we're talking like the 20s?
Well, he played, very early. In fact, here's a fun stat about him. Like, he played with the Habs, like the first version of the Canadiens. He helped the Canadiens win their first Stanley Cup, or the Stanley Cup for the first time, I think, in 1909-10. He scored the first goal for the Montreal Canadiens when they were in the NHA. He played in the first Montreal Canadiens game in history. But one I just found these guys love my New Zealand Lalonde stats, but one that I just found out that's great is in 1907, he played for Toronto in the Ontario Professional Hockey League, and he scored 29 goals in 9 games. So that's averaging 3.2 goals a game, or averaging a hat trick a game. I mean,
so
he was
like 12-year-old Gretzky. Like
yeah.
Yeah.
He was just a phenomenal player, and he's got a great name in Newsy. And you're right. Like earlier, you said how baseball was a big sport in Canada. The other sport, but lacrosse, huge sport in Canada, especially early in the 20th century. See, and another reason why, if you don't know a lot about Newsy, you're going to book.
You're going to hard sell here. This is
you'll get used to it.
And so I don't have to guess whose that is. And the last one is the expansion year Caps, right?
Yeah. This
and
is
where they win like 10 games or something.
8. The book would be called
games.
8 is Enough. And it was just
okay. The book will be called 8 is Enough.
So this is the time when the WHA was out there and the player pool was really low. And I think the Kansas City Scouts came in the same year.
Okay.
But they did much better than Washington. So yeah, their record was 8-67-5.
Good God. Okay.
But I think the book and I realize I'm pitching it more than the other guys, but
yeah, I think do you have an agent lined up? Because it sounds like you're well into this project.
It wouldn't focus on the negative. It would focus on the positives of what came out of the season, the friendships. How do you get through a season like that? Like, I would want to read the book about these guys on the road having to get up and play these games and persevere.
Yeah.
I have an idea for a title. Offensively Capital.
Oh, it's a little, yeah.
About
Capital offense?
Kind of a stretch. It's a bit of a
I just also pitch, if we're going to pitch stuff now, let's pitch a Quantum Leap episode where Matt goes back and it goes into the body of Newsy Lalonde for a day, just because I think that's to do it. Just be Newsy for one day.
And as Newsy, he has to play for the 74-75 Caps.
I'll just work at the Cornwall Freeholder. I think that's where he worked and got his nickname, Newsy.
Was he from Cornwall?
Yeah.
Oh, God. Okay.
And just for no reason at the very end of the episode, Tommy Pham slaps him in the face, and then he goes back.
And wasn't his quote about that it was like I slapped him and he deserved it or something like that?
Yeah, he was not apologetic. No.
He deserved to be slapped. Yes. I will say that I am drawn to sort of depictions of flamboyant failure, and it sounds like the 74-75 Caps fit that description.
Yeah.
It's like I wrote a thing in the second book about the 2003 Detroit Tigers, who lost 119 games. And my question when you look at anything on that scale is like, how do you continue to get up and go to work every day?
Yeah.
Like they had lost 100 games before the calendar flipped to September, right? Like that's got to be brutal, but you have a job to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, your reason for getting up is to try to fight to not be the worst team of all time.
Right.
And maybe that's your incentive. It's like, we're not going to be the worst ever.
This team,
7 games this month.
This team lost 4 games by 10 or more goals. Like that's it's not good. But they kept going out there and skating.
I bet you the Washington football team didn't lose 4 games by 10 or more.
Yeah. Oh, but
yeah.
Yeah.
And if you look at these 3 teams, if you have to make a decision, these 3 teams of books, and say you're like, I'm going to pick one of these. This is the set of 3 we would probably make, or this is the right team. Who would you think? Go with?
There's a 3-book deal. You can't pick anyone individually. It's a 3-book deal. I don't know anything about 3-book deals, but I'll try to imagine. So there's a lot of books I would read all these books. Maybe not the Newsy book.
You just made our week.
I think taken as a whole, I'd have to go. I think I'd have to go with Team One. I think the '85 ALCS is just playing right into my wheelhouse, and I really kind of want to read that Jerry Krause biography.
Nice. Well, that's
good.
For me. That's a victory for people who hate New Zealand. I was saying earlier in the podcast, I remember the 1985 when they lost. I was 13 and I couldn't stop crying. I was just crying and crying. And then they had this Petro-Canada pre-shot commercial where it was like the outfield, like Barfield and Mosby and Bell walking up to the Petro-Canada. And he's like, "Thank you, fans, for being this They played it right after they lost. And it made me cry even more. And it was just me and my grandmother watching this game. And my grandmother turned, "Stop it. You stop it right now. You stop it right now." That was my that was out here consoling me. Just stop it.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So I think that was my introduction to just how much heartbreak sport could provide, right? Like, and Dave Steve taking the loss in Game 7, like, oh my God, and George Brett just
Jim Sundberg
dismantling.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
Yep.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, no, I mean, all those, as I say, that's a strong collection of books. I think on the strength of the ALCS book and the Jerry Krause book.
Fair enough.
I got to go Team One.
I think I've realized in retrospect my books were too Dwayne Wade focused.
It's a lot of Dwayne.
It is. It's too much Dwayne Wade. My content was that was my error.
No,
but I do like I got to say, I like the angle of the 2003 NBA draft from like the Pistons war room perspective. That would be strong as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think as I remember too.
I love when you have a collection of men who are so sure of their decisions, who are so high on their own supply, and they've just bought all of the hype about themselves, and they think they know everything, to be so completely wrong about something.
Yeah. It is fantastic.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, self-delusion is always it makes for an engrossing read for sure.
And as I said too, at the time that Darko was drafted, it's not like when Anthony Bennett, you remember the Canadian kid, was drafted 1 overall, and a lot of people were like, "What the hell?" Like, Darko was the pick. It wasn't like the Pistons were the only team that thought that. Everybody did.
Yeah.
And everybody was dead wrong.
Well, Andrew, we're gonna have to have you back for more of this because it's such a great time having you on. We want to have you back before 2025, but if it ends up being 5 and you want to promo of the series, essays, which are fantastic, you're always welcome back. And just a little bit of a teaser for the fans out there too. We're going to be in the Bob Cajun area in June doing a live recording, so we're going to have too. So that's going to be a little
excellent. That is proximate to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have to have you come out and hang out with us then, Andrew, when we're there.
That sounds great. Give me the details.
Okay.
This 2 books again. If you're on YouTube, I'm holding them up. But if you're on the podcast, The Utility of Boredom is the classic from Andrew. The more recent is The Only Way is the Steady Way. And we have another one to look forward to in 2025. Shucks.
That's how I'm feeling after that draft result. Shucks.
What's that?
That's how I'm feeling after that draft result. Shucks.
That's
put all your eggs in the New Zealand basket. I don't know what you expect.
I'm keeping them there.
All your eggs in the New Zealand basket, indeed, for sure. And he'll continue to do it. We know he's going to continue to bring up New Zealand all the time. So it's not over yet.
Just be grateful there was no Cleveland Spiders content.
Oh, it's a whole other fascination of Matt's. Andrew, thank you so much. We'll have you back soon. And enjoy the rest of the night. And we're looking forward to your new books.
Thanks very much, Andrew.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Andrew.
All right. Take care.
All right, fantastic. I felt a little bit studious in that episode because we had to talk about books, writing,
No,
smarter than I usually am.
Yeah. It was. It was.
You looked studious.
You're wearing glasses. You look studious.
Yeah.
Frank always looks studious in his glasses.
We classed it up. Is that what you're saying?
We're
always classy, but
we keep it above the
above
the belt.
I was waiting for the last part of that. All right. Thanks so much for listening to This Day in Sports. This has been January 17th, and a lot of things happened, including going all the way back, the Yuri Curry weirdness.
Yeah, all the sevens.
All the sevens. Lucky sevens. I'm Sandy Jobin Bevins.
I'm Matt Kippen.
I'm Mike Shera.
There's Frank Russo over there. We'll talk to you soon on This Day in Sports.